What you got there, sweetie?
My art.
Your art?
Mm-hmm. This is the canvas that's gonna go over here, so when we sail, the stuff doesn't go flying.
Yeah.
But I did it in a way so it's like longer, so then I'll fold it over. It's about 2 inches on each side, so then the clasp will be thicker because there are gonna be buttons, so it's gonna be like that.
Yeah,
There's
that's
some
good.
extra room up here, so it'll be like that.
Yeah.
So I didn't want this being infringed upon.
Looks good.
Mhm.
What's the where did we get the fabric from?
What's it called?
It was the Dodger.
The dog.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so we scrapped the old Dodger. It was falling apart. All the stitching was broken and the plastic windows were all torn and stuff. So we decided to kind of scrap it. Plus we didn't have the poles for it. And we figured, hey, why not reuse the canvas? Because the canvas in certain parts was serviceable. So we'll be able to hold everything in. Yeah, that was good. No more loose, dry goods falling when we start healing.
Mhm.
So we ordered some button snaps. We'll probably just put some button snaps here, and then put the buttons through the fabric, and then clip it on. We're stuck inside today. We got a bunch of hail and sleet and freezing rain again. Oh man! I hear my slippers getting pelted. Look at all the hail coming down. I'm sure you can hear it too. It actually hurts. Like it physically is hurting because the pellet's pretty darn big. It hit me in the ears and stuff. You can see the weather's pretty bad out here.
It's so nasty. You're gonna have to snake it down there because it's not clogged on the surface.
Adding to my plumbing projects.
Yeah, you did it. You fixed it.
I'll fix it. So today seems to be plumbing projects. I had a leak from the water line that comes from the water tank into the water pressure system. There was unfortunately a leak in that. And there's a bunch of water in this kind of compartment before it goes down into the bilge down there. And I originally thought it was condensation because it got pretty cold in there from the cold seawater, but it actually was dripping. So I found that, tightened it up. The wiring for the 12-volt solar panel charging system is pretty much done. So on the left there I have the charge controller. You can see the cabling down there below. I have the 2 breakers there, 40 amp breakers. One is coming from the solar array to the charge controller, so that one leads back to the back of the boat. And then the other one goes from the charge controller to the battery. And this is the installation recommendation, straight from the user manual for this charge controller. Also the Bluetooth module connected in down there. Right now I have both the breakers off since I have yet to install the panels. But that brings us to the most recent delivery, which is 2 HQST flexible solar panels. So these just came in yesterday. I'm still waiting on some of the button snaps to come in so that we can come up with a method to mount them securely to the bimini. But the plan is to either reuse the existing grommet holes if the holes are of an okay size. If the holes are too big, then we would just relocate, drill a little hole through here, and then punch through the button there. So plan is to do, I think it was 11 per panel, so it would be corner, I guess that's that quarter of the way, halfway, quarter of the way, corner, halfway, corner, quarter, center, quarter, and then another quarter. So I got some pretty good like name brand button snaps, not ones off like Amazon. I got them on sale right, so they had pretty good reviews. So hopefully they'll be pretty secure. If not, we can always upgrade, get one of the kind of the push lock or the twisty turny kind of locks as well. See this box here, this is a RJ45 Cat6 Ethernet cable, and that is for this fellow over here. So for whatever reason we get really bad Wi-Fi in this boat, and I don't know if it's the marina signal, if it's the fiberglass which causes issues. I know metal and water both cause issues with RF waves, but I bought this to mount on the outside of the boat, most likely on a pole mount type of location, so kind of like that. We'll not be putting it on metal, of course, because that'll interfere with the signal. Probably use like a wooden dowel or something. So what this is going to do, this actually acts as a Wi-Fi client, which if you're not familiar with wireless internet terminology or wireless networking terminology, that means it acts as essentially a receiver, so it can receive wireless signals. What it's going to do is it's going to receive whichever wireless signal it's programmed to, or connect into it with Ethernet and tell it which one to look at, connect into that, and then basically transmit that connection through a cable. This is going to be mounted kind of near the transom area, near the dinghy davits. And I want to use this long Ethernet cable to run back from the rear of the boat, run through, come out up here, and then up here we have a relatively high-end TP-Link router. So, looking pretty good there. So basically we're going to pass that signal, the whatever internet I decide to pick up outside, it's going to come through here and then broadcast in the boat on a router. So rather than us having to rely on somehow getting an internet connection from outside, you know, passing through the hull and everything, we're just going to grab it from the outside and then bring it inside. So this is a pretty kind of lesser expensive access points that also can act as a client. Ubiquity has some pretty good ones too, but they're really expensive. They're like $500, which I would purchase if I had unlimited money, but I don't. So I got this one for about 130 bucks. We'll see how it performs. I think it has, I think the antennas are 7 dBi, 6 dBi, 7 dBi, but I can always purchase a much larger omnidirectional antenna if I choose to. Or I could even go directional if I know the direction of the Wi-Fi. But most likely omnidirectional, since we'll be moving around at anchor. But that'll help us get internet from pretty far away and hopefully pick up, you know, open free Wi-Fi, or potentially use like the Xfinity Wi-Fi, or at least something to even, you know, rent or purchase a key for the day. So that's the plan for that. Coming over here, we also have a Boss Marine external stereo / receiver. So this is I believe it's 60 watts per channel, 4 channel, but at 4 ohms, so it's probably closer to like 35 watts, 40 watts at 8 ohms. And this is going to be mounted outside so that I can finally use those speakers that are mounted by the steering column. And luckily my phone, at least on certain Android models, mine, of which is one, can play to 2 Bluetooth sources, or 2 Bluetooth, I guess, destinations at once. So I'll be able to, and I already tested it, transmit my Bluetooth signal to this one, and also to the internal stereo receiver, which will have this Bluetooth receiver mounted probably somewhere out here, so we can pick up a signal while I'm still outside sailing. So that way we'll have continuity in music, and the same music playing on the inside of the boat as well as the outside. And the nice thing is it's 4 channels. I only have 2 speakers out there right now, but if I eventually decide I want to upgrade and install some more speakers, it's pretty easy. Just plug it right in. So it also has audio out if for whatever reason I ever want to hook up a stereo out there, which would, I guess, kind of excessive in my opinion. Has USB charging, but there's really no way to hook up that through the fiberglass. And oh, and it also has the NOAA weather stations built in, which is pretty cool. So I will probably get a antenna for it, just so I can pick up those weather stations while we're out sailing if I choose to. So those are all the recent goodies. Okay, well, back to the starter, and as you can see, I am pretty deep into this process. Thought this was going to be a, I don't know, hour-long project, and we're much further than 1 hour now at this point. So, unfortunately, those bolts down there, the ones that I was trying to get off originally, you can see the rusted bolt down there. There's one of them, there's two. Those, no matter what I do, I cannot get those off. I've spent quite a bit of time putting penetrating oil on them. I've torched them, pretty much everything, and got some leverage, kind of like a makeshift breaker bar. Still can't get them off. So kind of what I decided to do was reverse engineer the new starter and see how I could take it apart as much as possible and attempt to essentially put as much of the new starter in the old starter housing that I can. So as you can see, this is the new starter here. Got the new starter. We also have the new solenoid. Had to open that up to figure out how that worked. And then this is kind of like the back plate for the new starter. This is the new starter, I guess kind of like gearbox, if you want to call it that. This basically takes the turning of the starter and passes it onto the engine. That's where it passes it onto the engine. This is the piece that I cannot get off, but I can probably get everything up to this off the engine, because this actually separates from this as well, potentially. Haven't gotten that far yet, as you can see. That this piece is basically in there, so that's what's in there right now. This is the old starter, and you can see it's seen some better days, quite a bit of rust. Oh, piece is falling off now. And then as well, if I look at the old solenoid, now I'm not sure if this is what the culprit was, you know, I'm kind of hoping, but you can see if I zoom in here and it wants to focus on the solenoid, there we go. You can see all this rust here. Now I'm not sure if that has anything to do with it, but at the bare minimum, I mean, that thing is pretty rusty and it really probably needed to be replaced anyways. So I couldn't find any YouTube videos about how this starter works, so hopefully this might help someone in the future. But basically what happens is you have the, this is the solenoid. The solenoid kind of acts as a, basically converts electricity to physical motion. What it does is it uses this little plunger style device here. You can see it should drop down, which actually it's a, there it is there. You can see how the plunger kind of comes in and out, kind of hard to do with one hand. And then this spring, which just fell off, acts as a lever for a basically a little metal arm, which I have somewhere down here. This is the old one, I believe, but this lever here basically pushes this component up to the engine, and then starts the engine. So it physically pushes this gear. You can see it comes up out, and that's the pushing action. So right now, you know, it's free, it's not attached to the engine. That little plunger arm piece, after the solenoid is activated, pushes this forward with a lot of force, and then it engages the engine and then starts the engine. So that's how it works. And I couldn't find a single video online about it, so I kind of just took it apart and had to figure it out myself, unfortunately. Now what I'm going to do is kind of replace as much as physically possible here. So I'm going to try to get the rest of the housing off, and then try to get the kind of the main core component of the starter itself into the old housing, and if I can, get as much of the new housing on, and then pop the new solenoid on. One thing that you want to note with these that I kind of wish I had done beforehand, but once this lever arm comes out, the only way you're going to be able to get the lever arm back in so that it can properly engage the gearbox is by taking it apart to about this stage, because you have to be able to push in with kind of like a little screwdriver that circular metal piece down in there. So you have to push that in, and then the lever will fall in behind it, such that it can then push the gear in place and start the engine. Alrighty friends, finally some good news. I was able to get the solenoid kind of arm right on that little interior curved piece, right up in this area. Basically just push this forward and it pushes that shaft forward. It's kind of like spring loaded almost or something. And basically what happens on this end, like I showed earlier, this comes out, which allows you to then get that little solenoid arm down in there. Now I put in the solenoid with the arm kind of at the same time. You can see it up there. And basically just kind of got it lined up. And then what I did was with one hand, I used the screwdriver to push the shaft forward, that spring-loaded shaft, and then use the other hand to basically just wiggle the solenoid around, which allowed that arm to drop down to where it should be. And now it's in the proper location. So I'm going to go ahead and bolt that solenoid back on now that it's in the proper location, and then from there install the, I guess you can kind of call this the starter core. This is like the actual electric motor. And then once I get the core installed, then go ahead and wire it back up to the solenoid. So we're making progress, albeit a little bit slow. And there's the old one there, so that one's gonna get recycled somewhere. I get about 50 cents scrap for it. We are almost there. The solenoid is on and nice and tight. I also realized that some of the old original gasket kind of separated while I was taking the old one off, so I used some Permatex number 2 non-hardening form of gasket sealant. So pretty cool stuff. I got this actually to do the sender for the diesel fuel. Apparently this is kind of like the gold standard for gaskets, especially when you're operating kind of like in an engine area where you might have diesel or gasoline or oil. Apparently that helps or starts to break down silicone and other things like that. I think we're good. I just started it up 3 times in a row. Perfect startup, and it actually sounded like a lot more aggressive slash almost like electrical. Like, you know, when you start a car up and it makes that like, you know, like kind of electrical sound. It sounded a lot more before I turn it back off. Hopefully this is it. Hopefully we're done at least for the next 5 years or so with this starter. So fingers